All right, Sean Williams here, Inside Hilltopper Sports Zoomcast. We're back. We're here with the great Noah McGhee, who was a little tardy to our regularly scheduled podcast Zoomcast earlier. So we're gonna Noah. I think you did this on purpose, just so you can get your own Zoomcast this week.
I mean, I'm not going to say you're right, and I'm also not going to say you're wrong. I mean, I did Casey. I wanted Casey and Tyler to get their time in, and I also didn't want to. I figured that if I had my own separate podcast, that this is going to be the one that fans are going to look back at later in the season. They're going to be like, "Hey, this guy might have been onto something." At least that's what I think. Credit. I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know what's going to happen going forward, but I have my opinions and I have my thoughts going forward about what happened on Saturday.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. Let's do it right away. Obviously, I asked Tyler and Casey positives and negatives, but I know we've texted since the game on Saturday. You've had a lot of things to say, or at least teased a lot of things you've got to say. So I'm interested in hearing it. It has a lot to do with the Twitter buzz and fans' natural overreaction they have from losses like the one against Louisville, which Western, went down 35-21 to the Cardinals. But Noah, the floor is yours, my man.
Wow, and what a mistake that was giving it to me. So I guess Hilltopper fans, Tyrell Pigrome is the answer. He is the guy. Whether you like it or not, he is the guy. I don't know how you look at Saturday and you tell me that any guy on the depth chart would have played better than he did. The offensive line is a really experienced group, and they didn't do a good job. That's the one unit that in the past the top teams have been able to count on, and they did not handle the pass rush well up front at all for Louisville. Pigrome was under distress a lot, but if it wasn't for his ability to keep his feet moving in the pocket and just to keep plays alive and keep looking downfield, I know that they scored 2 touchdowns off of mistakes on punts mishandled by Louisville, but the final drive where they scored their touchdown pass, in goal-to-go situations, that drive would have never happened were it not for Pigrome's ability to get out and run and create plays on the ground. I mean, no offense to Davis Shanley and those guys, but they don't have the athleticism that Pigrome presents. He presents a whole, as we talked about last week, he presents a whole different dimension with his legs and his ability to make the defense respect his ability to run and keep them honest in terms of, I even tweeted out that Louisville should stop blitzing, because whenever Louisville brought 6 and 7 man pressures, he made them pay. He had a 25-yard run, which I could even go on a 5-minute rant about that, because there were a couple of receivers that did not block. They could have sprung him for 40, maybe even a touchdown if the receivers had continued to block. I think there's a lot of growing pains because, as I wrote about last week, Louisville is the best, if not at worst, the second best team that the Tops will play all year. BYU, obviously, if you watched them play Navy a couple of weeks ago, super physical, and they're a smash mouth football team. But Louisville's the most athletic team that Western's going to play, and there's a lot of youth and inexperience on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, 21 points created the special teams. We didn't talk about it much last week because we didn't realize how big of a role they were going to end up playing. The offense did what they could, and genuinely, that game on Saturday is, if you can flip the script on 3 or 4 different plays defensively, we might have ended up in overtime between the Tops and the Cards. Like, genuinely, the 3rd and longs on Louisville's own goal line, if the defense comes up with stops, we're potentially looking at a game that's a lot closer. So I don't think the Tops fans need to bail on Pigrome yet. Yes, did he have some balls that he threw behind guys? Of course. And then, of course, did he float a couple that should have maybe been picked off or just looked ugly? Yes. But here's the thing. I think if you did your homework before you watched him, you knew that was the type of player he was. Nobody said that this guy was going to come in and be a refined passer. Where he's not Ty Story. He's Tyrell Pigrome. He's got the athleticism. That's what makes him so much different. I mean, if you put Story in that position last year, would the passing attack have looked different Saturday? Yes, I do think so. But Pigrome also had to deal with a lot of drops. Really inexperienced receiving corps, and most of the guys they trotted out there to start were guys that I didn't even realize were going to get to play. We heard a lot about Dayton Wade and how good of a camp he had, and I don't even think he got any snaps. So it's very easy to point fingers at the quarterback in a loss like that. But the run game never got going either, and Pigrome was the guy that kept drives alive when possible. And he made a couple tough throws, genuinely. The deep ball to Pearson. Now, when I'd watched his tape this summer, I hadn't seen that at all. I was genuinely impressed that he made that throw. Obviously, Pearson ended up on the bad end of it because he ended up coughing it up, and he took a big hit. So then, and that's fine. Like but we got to see that ability that it's there and he can flash it. I mean, Louisville's a good team. Nobody's taking that away from Louisville. That was a good win for Louisville, and that I think Western showed a lot of flash promises. The negatives, the two things I would point to is the offensive line just did not look well. They didn't handle the pass rush well at all. Which then again, as I talked about, the guys on the edge for Louisville they're freaks. I mean, they're really twitchy. They've got great bend, and they convert speed to power really well. So they got after Pigram, but once again, if it weren't for his legs, it would have looked a lot uglier. And then, man, the secondary, they got to get off the hashes, man. It's kind of like, so my basketball coach would tell me, you have to meet the ball. You can't wait for it to come to you. There were a lot of times on Saturdays where the safeties would not get back or would not drive on the ball when they had the opportunity to and missed out, like the Des Fitzpatrick touchdown. That should have been an interception. That should have went the other way. Once again, a play that if you change one thing about that play, it changes the entire game. That's how football works, though. You know, there's 3 or 4 plays where it's like, oh, if you could change this, then this would have happened. So we could play that game all day. But there's just so many things where you can't just point at the quarterback, man. I mean, there's so many different factors, and I think it starts defensively. The front seven looked amazing to start the game. D'Angelo Malone is already in Defensive Player of the Year form. The linebackers played really well. Eli Brown, I wasn't sure how he was going to perform coming off of his injury and not have played in so long. And he had a solid game. Devin Key did a really good job once again of defending the option. He always does a really good job of that. So I think the corners and the safeties will they'll have to regroup because the Liberty team that's coming to town this weekend, Hugh Freeze, if you watch them at Ole Miss, they love to throw the ball down at Ole Miss. And Liberty is they're another high flying offense who they're going to try to score a bunch of points and throw it 40 times too. So they better be prepared this weekend for this kind of the same thing except for more quick spread out passing attack from Liberty.
You good? You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Right.
That was it.
That was stage 1, right?
We're not done yet.
You mentioned you bring up a good point. Pigram's ability to keep drives alive with his legs. I mean, you mentioned Western had a total of 119 rushing yards. 68 of those were from Pigram. So you mentioned his ability to extend plays and keep drives alive with his legs.
Yeah, I mean, if you put any other quarterback on the roster in that situation, there are a lot of drives that get killed quicker. Like you put them, because Louisville's mentality, I think, throughout most of the game was in 3rd and long. Pigram's ability to throw, we don't respect it, so we're going to send 6 and 7 at you to move him off his spot. But if anything, if I'm Brian Ellis and Tyson Helton, I'm like, yeah, please do that, because that gives him the opportunity to where if you don't fill a gap, then he's flushing out to that way, and there's nobody in the second level in front of the sticks to make that play. And that happened a couple of times. So, I mean, if you can nitpick some of his plays, but he didn't turn the ball over. He had an issue with turnovers in Maryland. He didn't turn it over. He played turnover-free football. His completion percentage was not great. But once again, if you did your homework beforehand, you knew that you know what kind of guy you're getting. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know there's, as we talked about, there's some fans that believe there's other guys on the depth chart that should have been starting ahead of him. I disagree. I knew once Pigram committed to transfer to Western that he was going to be the guy. And I fully expected – I personally – he exceeded my expectations. And, like, I talk about drops. Joshua Simon, the ball he threw on the corner route to Joshua Simon in the back of the end zone late in the game should have been a touchdown. Joshua Simon needs to catch that ball. He put it in the perfect spot. He put it where the kids can't get it if you're a tight end, as they say. Joshua Simon was the only guy that could have caught that ball in the back of the end zone before eventually, Pigram had to, on 4th down, keep the play alive with his feet. And if it was not him, nobody else would have been able to do that. Credit they didn't score, but just you see the flashes of his ability. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's plenty of positives. If you can't be a box score watcher with some of these things, you got to see it on the field. Don't be a box score watcher, guys. I promise you. Please don't do that.
You mentioned 2 things. Obviously, I think Pigram passing was 10 of 23. Obviously, Louisville brought a lot of rush. Offensive line for Western Kentucky didn't really help him out either. there were throws where he threw it kind of flat-footed, didn't have the best mechanics. What did you kind of see in some of those throws? Just mechanic-wise, was it more about Louisville's pressure? Was it more about Western Kentucky's offensive line not handling that pressure? Just kind of give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so footwork wise, I probably have to. I would agree with you. I'm a big footwork guy. When I mean, it starts at your base. You look at some of my man crush in terms of footwork in college football got played earlier in the day, and that was Sam Howell. And if you watch Sam Howell, he's constantly moving his feet level, like just whenever he's going through progressions here, here, here. Pigram doesn't do that, which once again I don't expect him to. But yeah, he did end up flat-footed a couple times. All of his spikes were in the ground though, so I can't fault him for that. His drops were a little choppy, so mechanic wise, he'll get coached up and he'll get better as the season goes on, and he'll get more comfortable. And once again, I think talking about the receivers not getting broken in, that's most of these guys, it's their first game action in a really long time, or if ever on the Division I level. So part of that is the experience. I've outside of Pearson, a lot of those guys are either JUCO guys or guys that haven't really seen the field before. So it's going to come with time. And when we talked about last week the chemistry between Pigram and the receivers and how that would look, and of course everybody knew Ja'Cour Pearson was going to be, he's going to be great. He's going to give you 5 or 6 catches for about 60 yards and a touchdown if he can. And he did his job. He honestly did his job. He just had a bad fumble and late, and I'm not necessarily going to fault him for it. But the one guy that I was really disappointed in terms on the receiving end was, I just said his name a while ago, Joshua Simon. I thought was going to be like the man this year. Tight ends in football now are moving towards not your line of, put him on the line of scrimmage and make him a run blocker. Joshua Simon's is like a 4.5, 4.6, freak athlete who's going to stretch the middle seam up the field, and he's going to present a threat to whoever's playing in the middle of the field in those hook zones in terms of middle linebackers, and then even put pressure on some safeties to come and carry him into the next level of the field. And he had a drop on, I believe it might have been a hitch or something. He dropped a ball, and then obviously the corner route that Pigram hit him on in the end zone just didn't come up with it. He didn't squeeze it. So there's a lot of, you can look at the negatives, but you can also look at the positives and take things into context of what was going on in the game and who they were playing.
Yeah, we, talking to Casey and Tyler, they kind of brought up Joshua Simon. Maybe he wasn't targeted enough. What did you kind of see with that? I mean, because, you mentioned how big of a year he had last year, especially in that bowl game. That was kind of like a breakout performance for him. He had one earlier in the season as well. But what did you kind of see in terms of trying to get him – could they have got him more involved in the offense? What's your perception on that?
Yeah, the one thing I think I'll be interested to see this week is Helton last year took a while to open up the playbook and really get creative with things. And the one thing they did a lot to get Joshua Simon involved was they got it. They got him naked in the flat, couple bootlegs, just got him out there in space against zone coverage and let him catch and make plays up the field instead of sending him downfield all the time. They let him catch and make plays with his rack ability. But instead they didn't really do that. I thought that towards the goal line at the very end, instead of running a corner out, they would have maybe went with an RPO and just leaked him out of the backfield or something to give him a chance to score with his rack ability. So I think this weekend that you'll probably see him get a little more vertical in terms of his where his routes are stemming from, and I think he'll get targeted more. Like I said, you said he didn't have many targets this weekend. So we'll just have to see what the game plan is, in terms of getting him more involved going forward. But he's got to be a guy that contributes. There's no debate and there's no question about that because he's one of the more experienced guys. Despite him being a sophomore, he had a really good year last year playing in to a degree the tight end 2 spot in the offense. So they're going to have to just get him free, get him a couple easy short catches early on this weekend, and I bet we'll see the Joshua Simon of old this Saturday.
Yeah, you mentioned, just Pigram's performance, not maybe targeting Simon a lot, but you bring up good factors as you previously mentioned in your arguments. I mean, this is the first game for Pigram for his new team, so it's going to take time for him to gel with receivers, teammates, everything like that. So, but yeah, I mean, when you look at it, it's like you say, you can't be a stat. Look at the stats and be mad about it. You got to look at the film.
Yeah, if you want to look at box score, go look at when Western played UAB last year. Ty Story didn't throw for 300 yards and 3 scores. He was very average. He was game manager-esque in that game. But the defense had a fantastic game turning the Blazers over in that game, forcing that upset here at the Houch. So, if that's what it would have taken on Saturday is the defense would have had to force more turnovers. And as I mentioned, they had the opportunity to, but they did not capitalize on that. Kincaid had 2 money opportunities to come up with interceptions. He had the one with the Des Fitzpatrick touchdown, and then there was a ball that he had dropped down in between and made it a high-low read between Cunningham and his receivers, and he made a play on the ball, but just went right through his hands, and that's football. It happens. And the one interception they did come up with, I was like, the one that you didn't need because it cost them 15 yards since it was 4th down. I was like, well, of course, the one that they come up with is the one that hurts them. So, yeah, the defense is going to have to help out Pigram until he gets more comfortable in the offense. If you want to be, a stickler about Pigram's stats, then go look at Ty Story's last year because I loved Ty Story last year too. I knew that he was going to be the guy whenever he transferred. And I thought that in the UAB game when he started last year, I was like, you don't have to be the man. Just be enough. Do your job. That should be what the asking point is for Pigram because this roster is talented enough and has plenty of all-conference level players to help him out. He doesn't have to do it all.
So I think you kind of agree with, what I talked about with Tyler and Casey. They kind of agreed that secondary was an issue, offensive line was an issue. Was there any other position groups or anything like that for Western Kentucky you think were issues for them on Saturday?
There is one, and it's one that people don't. I'm a huge stickler about this, and it really drives me crazy. Run blocking from the receiver spot is so important, especially with the mobile guy. Because if you want to spring those big plays downfield, you're going to have to make sure you put a hat on a hat when you're running routes and you have space, on the field for Pigram to, use his wiggle and get loose. I mean, as I mentioned, there was on his 25-yard run, I believe it was in the first half, he had a chance to spring it for more, maybe even a touchdown, but there were a couple missed blocks, and it's like, if you make one block, that changes. That would have been another touchdown you put on the board, and then we're talking 28-35. So run blocking is going to be very important, and that comes with chemistry because sometimes, these younger receivers are, trying to get open, but at the same time they might not realize that Pigram's already tucked it and he's gone. And I get that, but it's going to be really important that they try to make it a point to remember, if I've got my eyes on the quarterback, if I'm running a in-breaking route or something like that, that I'm seeing him while I'm running my route at the same time that I can go put a hat on a hat if he has to take off. So run blocking from the receiver spot is going to be important moving forward. And I'm not saying they did a bad job. I'm just saying it could be better.
Yeah, I think you're kind of right. That goes with chemistry. First game with Pigram as the quarterback, trying to get used to that. You've got receivers out there that are still kind of trying to get comfortable, like you said, JUCO guys and everything like that. So comfort level, it's really tough for a team like Western when you've got, a new quarterback, some new receivers, things like that, just to kind of, go on the road, play an ACC team and a very tough Louisville team. It's supposed to be a lot better than they were last year, and they won 8 games and got a bowl win. So, anything else you want to add for the Louisville game?
No, not really. Just that I predicted them to lose by 20. They lost by 14, and I found myself like for a while there thinking, oh man, I'm going to be really, really wrong. I ended up being, to a degree, not to brag, but the closest to being right out of anybody on the staff. But I found myself, saying, man, they might really have a shot to do this early on. The special teams they look great. As I mentioned, the front seven looked fantastic. And the run, I said that they would have to stop Louisville from running the ball. And if you take away Hassan Hall's 41-yard run, which I believe, Sean, you know me, I'm not emotionally invested into these. I just call it how I see it. I believe there was a hold or two on Hassan Hall's big run towards the end of the second quarter. So I believe if that gets called, you take away that 41-yard run. Western did a really good job of defending the run, like against a run-first football team that has a lot of good athletes. So there's plenty of positives to take away if you're not looking at the box score.
Yeah, I think you'll see chemistry get better as the season goes on. So we're gonna kind of move forward. Speaking of that, and talk about Liberty, which comes into town on Saturday. Noah, what have you kind of seen from this Liberty team? What can you tell us about them overall?
So Liberty, independent in Division One, they're well. If it wasn't for Hugh Freeze, they are quietly a solid program. Don't look at the spread and think that somebody, especially as the home openers in the past 2 years have seen, don't look at this team and think that, oh man, it's just some no-name school. No, these guys can play. However, they are going to be challenged in terms of kind of the way that Western has, because they're in sort of the same spot. So Liberty is replacing a 3,000-yard passer in Stephen Calvert. They're replacing a 1,000-yard rusher and Frankie Hickson, and then a 1,000-yard receiver, and one of the best receivers in Division One last year, Antonio Gandy Golden, who is, I believe, now playing for the Washington Redskins. So they're a talent factory.
Hang on, it's a Washington football team, my man.
Oh man.
Hey, you know what? Casey mentioned that earlier, and he actually said Washington football team. I was really happy about that. He caught that. So,
Wow.
hey,
Yeah.
I would say the Redskins too, man. They're always going to kind of be the Redskins for the next few years for me. So,
Yeah, well, that's wow. Okay. Anyways, moving on to moving
carry
on.
on, Noah.
Yeah, if you actually could edit that out, I would totally be like, let's do that. Um. Anyways, so they're breaking in as as we know they're as we saw on Twitter earlier that I believe is the Wills kid from Auburn is going to be starting at quarterback. I've actually never watched him play before, but I believe if you get recruited by an SEC school, you have you've got talent and you have the ability to play quarterback at a really high level. I'm not really sure what they've got in terms of bringing things to the table, but I know that they lost a lot of talent, but they do like to they like to throw the football around the yard, and that they're going to try to score a bunch of points. That's just what Hugh Freeze has done. And defensively, they're also a 4-2-5 like Western is, so they're going to try to attack with multiple different looks and a lot of different athletes. I know linebacker wise that they actually have a guy that came over from Charlotte as a transfer. I'm not sure what his name is, but they're replacing a lot of talent. But this is still a good football team. I expect a really good game, potentially high scoring shootout here at the Houch on Saturday.
Yeah. You mentioned Liberty obviously replacing a lot of offensive talent. So, yeah, it could, there's a lot of unknowns there. You got the former Auburn quarterback playing, so it'd be kind of interesting to see how the offense kind of runs with him. Obviously, this is kind of an advantage for Western. They played a game. This is Liberty's first game. Do you see that being a factor as well?
Yeah, actually, and I would say so. I believe, especially with Western playing a Power Five school last week, I think that's a huge deal because we don't know what Liberty's done in camp from this past fall and in the summer, and how much they've been able to go through. One thing that I feel like is not being talked enough in preseason is a lot of people have shied away from contact drills and all. And so, if you look at the Navy BYU game, that's your prime example. Navy did not tackle all throughout camp, and that really they paid the price for it, and I believe 49-3. So I don't know in terms of how Liberty's been practicing in terms of contact and tackling, but that could present a real issue depending on this being their first game, especially a road game at that with an unfamiliar opponent. I believe we tweeted out earlier from our page today they've only met twice. Liberty owns both meeting wins, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'll be really interesting. I'll actually have to do some research in terms of how they've been practicing because I do think that plays a really big factor. Obviously, games and practices are very different now in terms of contact and what they're trying to do to prepare guys to play games on Saturdays. So I do think Western playing a game, and not only just a game, but a game against a really formidable opponent, is going to benefit them greatly going into this game Saturday.
Yeah, you bring up good points. The Navy BYU game and Nima Lodo, however you say his name. I butcher his head coach's name. Great coach, but said they haven't tackled all fall camp, and he said that at halftime, and they were already down by like at least 4 scores by then. So yeah, it kind of showed. I mean, when you don't have that physicality through fall camp, and then you go out there and you're trying to tackle people, and you don't know, it's almost you just rusty, man. You just don't know how to do it. So um, yeah, that'd be an interesting factor to see how Liberty's kind of treated their fall camp and whether it's been contact or not. So uh, we'll uh, we'll close. I guess we'll kind of close with your predictions for Saturday. Since you were bragging earlier that you got it pretty close.
Yeah, I'll see if I can defend my title this week. I'm guessing I technically win. I mean, if we're going total points and winner and margin of victory, I would say that I'm the winner from last week. So
Well, we're not handing out any like championship belts or anything like that. If you're expecting.
I think bragging rights is enough for it's enough for me. Humble. I will humbly brag on mine. But however, don't look at my game picks because I picked with College Game Day. It was not a good weekend this weekend. Not very good. Um, so my score prediction. Uh, I think with this being Liberty's first game, I think the run game will be established well. I think Gage Walker will. I think he'll get going Saturday. I think the offensive line will probably. They can play. Let's not get twisted. They had a bad game, but they can play. I think they're going to come out with a chip on their shoulder on Saturday because they did not play well last weekend, and they're going to say we're going to control the line of scrimmage and Gage Walker gets going, and I'm going to say 28. I'm going to say 28-20 Western. I think Liberty is going to struggle offensively. I'm sure practice-wise that Liberty probably has run some routes against air, and they're going. Timing will probably not be an issue, but in terms of picking apart different coverage shells and stuff like that will be different. Obviously, they've practiced against their own defense, but this defense is still good. I believe the secondary will straighten up too. The corners are going to be tested, and so are the safeties again this weekend. Obviously, the talent level in terms from what Louisville had is very different than what Liberty has, breaking in a lot of new guys. But I do believe that D'Angelo Malone and Juwan Jones and those guys are going to that they're going to make this kid from Auburn, the transfer, that they're going to make him uncomfortable back there in the pocket. So yeah, 28-20 Western is my score prediction as of right now.
I've got your down. Speaking of
Everybody else's, can I get an idea of what everybody else has got?
you got it. I'm fixing to give it to you, man. 28-21, Tyler's prediction, Western wins. 27-14, Casey's prediction, Western wins. So.
Okay, all right, yeah. So we're all pretty much hovering around the same thing, except for Casey's got a double-digit win. I could see them. I could see Western covering too, but I think Liberty's is well coached enough to, despite this being their first game and with all the craziness going on with the pandemic, I believe that they'll be ready and they'll fundamentally and just disciplined, ready to go on Saturday.
We also are taking bets whether Hugh Freeze will be coaching from a hospital bed from the press box on Saturday as well.
Oh man, I guess if he is, then I mean he'll be like right across from us, so that would be. I mean that would kind of be cool. Hopefully he's not in a hospital bed though. He's on the field. Yeah. So we'll see what that looks like. I'm excited for Liberty to come to town. I like watching them on TV whenever I can catch them. So it's like an Army thing for me. I get to see another small school who I enjoy watching play football. Come to Western and I get to see them for myself.
Right. Yeah, we were kidding about Hugh Freeze earlier, so I had to do it on this one as well. Yeah. I think he's fully healthy now. He should be on the sidelines. But yeah, no, it's really good. I mean, you consider the success Hugh Freeze had at Ole Miss, before all those incidents happened, of course. And, he was very well wanted from other SEC schools in terms of trying to be their offensive coordinator before he took over the Liberty job. So him taking over the Liberty job was kind of a surprise to a lot of people, but he's really got them rolling right now.
Yeah, if I'm honest, I believe I shared this with one of my roommates. Wow, I'm gonna go ahead. I thought I wanted Hugh Freeze whenever they let go of Sanford. I thought Hugh Freeze. I saw the rumblings on Twitter, and I was like, man, if Hugh Freeze came to Western, man, the offense is going to put up points. Like I genuinely thought that was going to happen. But I'm not saying I'm not content with Coach Helton. Coach Helton has done a really great job here on the Hill, and we're all happy to have him here.
Yeah. We'll tell Coach Helton you said that. Okay.
Hey, once again, I'm just an honest guy. I'm an honest guy. I'm not. Like I said, I'm not disappointed. Helton has done a really good job, and he continues to do it. So, I can't argue results.
Anything else you want to add before we hit the road?
No, I have not. I believe I'm going to try and crank out some film breakdown this week at Liberty. Obviously, it's going to be really difficult because offensively they don't have a lot of starters back. Defensively, lost some linebackers and all. So I'm going to try to crank out what I can and just maybe see what in terms of play calling and tendencies what I can find, and I'll have that out for you guys later this week.
All right.
And check out the CUSA weekend recap. This one is it's kind of fun this week, so I encourage that.
That's what they're all about, man. They're all about fun, and for the WKU fans, keep up with other Conference USA results as well throughout the season. So yeah, it's kind of good to have fun with those.
Yeah, I mean, if you're feeling bad as a Western fan, at least you weren't UTEP this week. Yeah. Well, I mean, Western had a bad night defensively defending the pass. At least you didn't give up 460 something yards. I believe it was 429 in one half to Sam Ehlinger.
Yeah.
So Sam Ehlinger he's a baller though. I enjoy watching Sam Ehlinger play at Texas.
Yeah, it could always be worse. So yeah. No, appreciate everything you're doing for Inside Hilltopper Sports. We appreciate your perspective on things. Doing a really good job, and maybe this individual Zoomcast will become a success, and we'll get some advertising money from it because everybody likes you.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Once again, though, I'm not much of the I'm the introvert though. I can't even plug my own Twitter, man. So like, we'll just have me on the call and I'll talk, and then you just tell me how it goes in terms of how it's perceived, and that we'll just go from there. So yeah.
We'll see if you're trying to start a new venture or not. If you're late for next week's Zoomcast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I might accidentally, not show up for it on time. So then we'll just have to do another one like this.
All right. For Inside Hilltopper Sports, Sean Williams, Noah McGhee, we are out.